So picture yourself standing at the edge of a stage. You've got your arms crossed tightly over your chest, and you're about to do a trust fall.
Oh, boy.
Right? You lean backward, and you're completely expecting this, like, tangled, interwoven net of your friends, your family, your coworkers to catch you.
Because that's the fundamental deal we make with society.
Exactly. We lean back, and they catch us. But what if the very act of relying on those specific people to catch you is, well, the hidden source of literally all your anxiety?
That is a wild premise to start with.
It really is. Today, we're opening up a translated blueprint for a radical alternative to human society. We're looking at excerpts from a text called Believe in and Rely on the Culture Building of the Second Home, which was authored by Zofeng.
And it presents a truly radical philosophical framework. But before we begin, it's important to explicitly state our mission for you today.
Yeah, good point.
We are not here to endorse the viewpoints of the New Oasis for Life, nor are we critiquing them from any specific social or political angle. We are acting purely as your guides, impartially examining these arguments exactly as they are presented in this original source material.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the core problem this philosophy attempts to solve is something I think every single person listening to this has experienced.
Oh, for sure.
It's the sheer exhaustion of dealing with other human beings. We're going to look at what I like to call the economics of human energy.
Right, like how many cognitive calories do you burn just trying to keep the people around you happy?
Exactly. Just so they don't pull the rug out from under your life.
Well, what's fascinating here is that this proposed blueprint doesn't just suggest a few lifestyle tweaks to make your relationship smoother.
Right. It's not a self-help book.
No, not at all. It doesn't offer, like, communication strategies for your marriage or conflict resolution for the workplace. It attempts to completely dismantle traditional human culture from the ground up.
Starting with who and what we fundamentally rely on to survive.
Yes. The author actually starts by taking direct aim at a very traditional proverb. It goes, "At home, we rely on our parents. In the society, we depend on our friends."
Which, I mean, that sounds perfectly lovely and supportive to most of us. It sounds like community.
It does, but this framework argues that depending on interpersonal relationships, like your parents, your spouse, your boss, your relatives, is actually the root cause of human suffering.
Wait, really? The root cause?
Yeah, the underlying philosophy here is that relying on individuals inherently turns survival into a transaction. To survive and develop an actual human society, people build this complex web of relationships.
Husbands, wives, children, bosses.
Right. And because your survival is tied to those specific people, relations become incredibly complicated. You get this cascade of negative outcomes when things fail.
Like what kind of outcomes?
The text lists things like forced concessions, oppression, jealousy, resentment, intrigue, and flattery.
Wow. Okay, so think of traditional reliance, like a localized power grid. You have your house wired to a generator that represents your job.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
And maybe you have a solar panel that represents your spouse and a battery backup for your parents. If one of those nodes fails, like if your partner leaves or your boss fires you, your grid experiences a massive blackout.
And you are suddenly freezing in the dark.
Exactly.
And because you are terrified of that blackout, your behavior actually changes. The author argues that because you depend on a boss for, say, a paycheck and healthcare, you're forced into flattery and the suppression of your true feelings.
You swallow your pride.
Yes, it's the transactional nature of survival that breeds deep-seated resentment. You aren't just interacting with your boss, you are managing a hostage situation where your livelihood is on the line.
Honestly, calling it a hostage situation makes a lot of sense in this context. The author actually uses the phrase, control of the soul.
Control of the soul, that's heavy.
It is. Calling it that implies everyday reliance isn't just an emotional burden. It is a literal spiritual prison. You agree with your boss, or you don't argue with a toxic family member because they are paying your tuition.
Because you become, in the author's words, a servant and sacrifice of others.
But, okay, I have to push back on this premise just a bit.
Go for it.
If we don't rely on the people closest to us, aren't we fundamentally denying human nature? Like, we are a biological social species built for pack survival.
We are.
How can a society even function without interpersonal reliance? If I can't rely on my partner or my parents, who do I rely on?
And that is the pivotal question driving the entire text. The proposed solution doesn't eliminate reliance entirely. Instead, it shifts the reliance away from the individual human beings in your life.
Okay, to where?
It places it firmly onto the collective, specifically onto an institution the author calls the home.
The home. Capital H.
Okay.
which is also referred to as the second home or the new oasis for life, right?
Precisely. And the promise here is that once you change your paradigm and place your trust entirely in this home instead of in people, all of the ugly phenomena born from transactional relationships will just disperse.
Like dark clouds, I think the text says.
Exactly, like dark clouds.
So how does this home actually function?
Yeah.
Because the logistics detailed in these excerpts are, they are incredibly comprehensive.
They leave nothing out.
Right. For every member who they refer to as a Chanyuan celestial, the home provides absolutely everything. It handles the entire life cycle from cradle to grave.
Food, clothing, shelter.
Yep. Transportation, health, and disease management. Everything.
It is a total absorption of survival needs. In Shuefeng's system, you wouldn't need to worry about your aging parents. The collective absorbs that responsibility entirely.
You don't worry about saving for your kids' college tuition either.
No, because the home raises and educates them.
And it doesn't stop at physical survival needs either. This is where it gets kind of wild. The blueprints explicitly state that the home also guarantees the freedom of emotional love and sex love.
Yes. That detail is absolutely crucial to understanding the mechanics of this society.
Wait, so the institution guarantees your sex life?
Well, by having the home handle all survival logistics, from your meals to the guarantees of your romantic life, the transactional nature of relationships is supposedly stripped away entirely.
Oh, I get it. When you interact with another person, you aren't silently calculating what you need from them to survive.
Exactly, because you aren't relying on your partner for financial stability. You aren't staying in an unhappy marriage just to keep a roof over your head.
Or to keep your health insurance.
Right. The home does all that. So when you spend time with another person, it is just pure, unburdened interaction.
The argument being that this strips human relations down to something pure and simple, right? Natural and harmonious.
Yes. The theory suggests people will simply live in happiness and warmth because there is literally nothing left to fight about.
Because the collective absorbed all the friction. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and where I have to challenge the reality of this structure.
Let's hear.
If an institution provides literally everything in your life, from the roof over your head to the food on your plate, all the way to guaranteeing your sex life, isn't the individual just trading a tangled web of personal dependencies for one massive totalitarian dependency?
That is the natural counter-argument, yes.
You're swapping out your localized, messy power grid for a single, universal, monolithic power plant. And if that one central plant goes offline, or, if the people running it decide they just don't like you, you have zero recourse.
You've handed over the master key.
Exactly. You've handed the key to your entire existence to a faceless bureaucracy.
I completely see the logic of that critique, but the source material counters that interpretation by elevating the home above a mere bureaucracy.
How so?
It doesn't present the home as a logistical distribution center or a corporate commune. It frames this ultimate dependency not as a trap, but as a mandatory path to spiritual liberation.
Which brings us to the underlying belief system required to make this actually work. Because you can't just drop average people into this environment without a massive psychological shift.
You really can't. The author outlines a very specific spiritual trinity. The blueprints dictate that members must build their belief in and dependence on 3 specific pillars.
The greatest creator, the home, and themselves.
Yes. And it emphatically clarifies what is absolutely forbidden. The text repeatedly warns, do not believe in and depend on man.
Because belief in and dependence on man will lead to tragedy, right? It's framed as a spiritual burden.
It requires a complete severing of individual human reliance. To replace that organic connection, the home is described as a fertile soil.
Scientifically designed, I think they say.
Scientifically designed to be the ultimate environment where a person can maximize their sincerity, kindness, virtue, and love.
And to do that, the blueprints completely redefine what community even means. It says that you shouldn't rely on your traditional biological family.
Instead, every Chanyuan celestial must be regarded simultaneously as your sister, your brother, your relative, and your lover.
See, applying that combination of words, sister, brother, relative, lover, to an entire community dissolves traditional boundaries in a really profound way.
It deconstructs the nuclear family unit entirely.
Think about the localized power grid analogy again. It's like removing the walls of a traditional nuclear family home, where you have these clearly defined, isolated roles of parent, sibling, and spouse, and just taking the roof of that house and stretching it over an entire society.
Everyone is family.
And everyone is a potential romantic partner, all governed and provided for by the home. The boundaries of loyalty are completely erased.
Redrawn around the collective. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look closely at the specific metaphysical vocabulary the author uses.
Right, because this isn't just about living comfortably.
No, the framework instructs members to sublimate the quality of life and explicitly capitalizes the word life. It also tasks members to perfect his or her own non-material structure of life.
Okay, so translating that metaphysical phrasing, non-material structure of life, we are clearly talking about the soul or consciousness or spirit.
Definitely.
So sublimating the quality of life essentially means upgrading your consciousness by removing the primal panic of survival.
Exactly. It proves that the home is framed as a vehicle for ultimate spiritual ascension. The text claims it is the mechanism for continuously making your way to the highest realm of life and realizing your long-cherished ideals.
The removal of transactional stress is just the prerequisite for spiritual perfection,
Right.
which naturally begs a massive logistical and philosophical question. If the home provides all this physical nourishment, absorbs all the burdens of child-rearing and elder care, and facilitates this profound spiritual ascension, what exactly is the individual expected to give in return?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because a system like this requires an unimaginable amount of resources.
It absolutely does, which brings us to the economics of devotion. The text details exactly how the individual interacts practically with the collective.
Outlining a specific mandated exchange of energy and labor, right?
Yes. Members are expected to unselfishly devote their talent and wisdom to the home. They are supposed to work, but the nature of that work is tailored.
They choose jobs according to their own interests and hobbies, don't they?
They choose based on interest, yes, but the expectation of quality is incredibly strict. The framework demands that they strive to do their absolute best and achieve first-class performance.
But the true mathematical core of this entire system is encapsulated in a single, rigorous mandate.
The most demanding rule of all, a member must contribute every day to the home more than one gets from it.
Contribute more than you get, every single day.
So what does this all mean? Let's just pause and critically examine the math of that devotion.
Let's do it.
If every single person in the community must contribute more than they take out every single day, how is that a sustainable equation for human energy?
It sounds impossible on paper.
Right. Think about the demographics. The blueprints promise the home would care for the elderly and the sick. If I am eating 3 meals, using electricity, utilizing the healthcare system, relying on the community to educate my children, how on earth do I guarantee my daily output is greater than all of that input?
Especially when you're just working from your hobby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Working from your hobbies doesn't miraculously create an endless surplus of energy and resources.
And that is the precise friction point where most utopian visions collapse.
Mhm.
How do you mandate a perpetual energy surplus from every individual without working them to death?
Yeah, how?
Well, the author seems to operate on a fascinating underlying theory about human potential. It goes back to our earlier discussion about cognitive calories.
Okay, tracking.
The theory implies that by completely removing the immense friction of interpersonal conflict, all the scheming, the resentment, the flattery, and the mental torture of transactional survival, you free up massive, previously untapped reserves of human energy. Oh, wow. I see. The underlying theory is that we are all operating at a massive energy deficit, simply because we are exhausted from managing each other.
Essentially, yes. The traditional web of relationships is viewed as a catastrophic energy drain.
That makes a weird kind of sense. In a normal society, you might spend, 40% of your mental energy worrying about your spouse leaving you destitute.
Or managing a toxic boss so you don't lose your health care. Or agonizing over how to afford care for your aging parents.
And in this system, that baseline anxiety completely vanishes. So the theory assumes that the massive amount of energy you used to spend managing survival anxiety is now redirected entirely into productive, joyful, first-class labor for the home.
Because your mind is clear, your output naturally skyrockets past your consumption.
That is an incredible psychological mechanism to rely on.
But of course, relying on good vibes and freed up energy isn't quite enough to run a society.
No, I wouldn't think so.
If you remove the organic, messy reliance on family and friends that usually keeps people in line through social pressure, you need a different mechanism to prevent utter chaos.
Right. Even without interpersonal reliance, you still have a society of human beings living together, People are still people. There has to be a robust operational system.
There is, and it is the ultimate guarantee of this entire blueprint. The author concludes by stating that the fundamental requirement for realizing both the wish of the individual and the ideal of the home is upholding a codified system.
Called the 800 Values for New Era Human Being. 800 values.
Yes, 800.
That is a staggeringly detailed operational framework.
But
That goes far, far beyond a simple golden rule of be nice to your neighbor.
oh, absolutely. It's a massive, rigidly codified matrix of human behavior.
But I guess it has to be comprehensive, right?
It does. When you dismantle the decentralized power grid of organic relationships, you need an incredibly complex, universal operating system to replace it.
We don't have the full list of 800 in these excerpts, but functionally, a system this large would require really rigid conflict resolution protocols.
Strict guidelines on resource allocation, rules on maintaining emotional detachment so interpersonal reliance doesn't accidentally form.
And exact metrics for what constitutes first-class performance in your daily contributions.
Exactly. It replaces the unspoken, messy social contracts we navigate every day with an explicit, unbending constitution.
The 800 values act as the structural steel for this new society. If you follow the 800 values the home provides, if you deviate, the entire mathematical equation of energy surplus falls apart.
And that is the delicate balance of the new oasis for life. Total liberation from interpersonal anxiety, purchased through total submission to a collective behavioral code.
Bringing this deep dive back to you listening right now, you obviously don't need to subscribe to the philosophy of the new oasis for life to find something deeply relevant in this analysis.
No, it's widely applicable.
This text holds a fascinating mirror up to our everyday lives. Think about your own week. Look at your text messages, your group chats, your work emails. How much of your daily stress, your anxiety, or what the author calls your mental torture, comes directly from the friction of depending on other individuals?
It is a profound psychological audit to run on yourself. Just asking, how many cognitive calories are you burning just keeping your Jenga tower from falling?
Truly, what would your life actually look like if you felt entirely, completely supported by a broader community or a rigid value system, instead of constantly worrying if the 3 or 4 people closest to you are going to drop the ball?
It's a tempting thought.
If the survival logistics of your life were just seamlessly handled, would you feel liberated to pursue your highest ideals, or would you feel trapped by the faceless system providing them?
And that tension leaves us with a final, lingering question to mull over as we conclude. The text presents a vision of society that attempts to engineer a perfectly harmonious environment by eliminating all interpersonal friction, jealousy, and the grueling struggle for survival. But if we look objectively at human history, profound innovation, breathtaking art, and deep psychological growth almost always stem directly from overcoming struggles.
They are born from the clash of ideas.
And from the very interpersonal friction this text seeks to eliminate.
Exactly. The pain of heartbreak inspires the song. The frustration with a broken system inspires the invention.
So if a society achieves this blueprint, if it successfully centralizes support, removes all transactional anxiety, and makes relations purely joyful and frictionless, what happens to human drive?
Does complete engineered harmony actually breed ultimate creativity and spiritual ascension, as the author suggests?
Or does a perfectly frictionless society risk falling into comfortable, unending stagnation, slowly dying from a lack of necessary productive struggle?
It really makes you wonder. The next time you fall backward into that trust fall, hoping your messy, complicated web of people catches you, ask yourself, is the terrifying, unpredictable wobble of that localized power grid actually the very thing that generates the spark of a meaningful life? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.